Summer vacation was supposed to be an adventure. Jake, Tessa, Mark, and Lindsay, 4 college friends bonded by their love for the outdoors, decided to skip the crowded trails and tackle a wild hike to Blackroot Mountain. The mountain barely appeared on standard hiking maps, which was exactly its allure. Nestled on the border of Oregon and Idaho, it promised secluded paths, ancient forests, and untouched mountain views. In a small town near the mountain's base, they stopped to grab extra supplies. A weathered wooden shop, Eagle Supply Company, stood among quiet buildings. Inside, an old man with sharp gray eyes and trembling hands handed them a local map. "Stay on the trail," he said softly, as if sharing a long-buried secret. "And if you hear voices, whatever they are, don't follow them." His words hung like fog among the dusty shelves. Lindsay lingered, catching a flicker of sincerity in his frail voice. But Jake just laughed as usual. "Old ghost stories to scare tourists," he said with a shrug. "We've heard this stuff on every hike." Tessa swatted his arm, telling him not to dismiss local tales, but they pressed on with their plan. The hike started with high spirits. Crisp mountain air, chirping birds, and sunlight filtering through dense pines made everything feel perfect. They followed a narrow trail, flanked by towering trees and thick underbrush. Every so often, they paused for photos or to gaze at the sprawling green valley below. As the sun dipped westward, the mood shifted subtly. Golden light seeped between tree trunks, casting long, dancing shadows. The forest grew quieter, as if nature itself was holding its breath for nightfall. Lindsay suggested finding a campsite before dark settled in. They found a clearing near a small stream and set up 2 tents. A campfire crackled, canned food warmed, and laughter echoed under a star-filled sky. But Mark stayed uneasy. He kept glancing at the trees across the stream. "Wait, did you guys see that?" he whispered suddenly, making Tessa and Lindsay turn. Jake spun around, following Mark's pointing finger. Among the tall, silent trees stood something, or someone. A dark figure, upright, human-like, but too still, too tall. Mark grabbed a flashlight and swept its beam toward the figure. In an instant it was gone. No snapping twigs. No rustling leaves. As if the thing had been a trick of the light, or worse, it knew they'd seen it and chose to slip away, for now. No one spoke for a long time after that. Even Jake's grin faded. That night, they slept in an odd silence, the campfire burning longer than usual. But deep down, especially for Mark, a nagging feeling took root, that from that night on they were no longer alone in those woods. As dawn brushed the treetops, the 4 hikers began packing up. Tessa led the way toward the trail they'd marked with orange ribbons the night before. But her eyes narrowed, her face twisting in confusion. Not a single ribbon remained, gone from the trees, bushes, and rocks where they'd tied them yesterday. Jake joined her, checking his phone for direction. The screen just spun endlessly, GPS couldn't lock a signal. "This is weird." "No signal at all," he muttered. They walked a few dozen yards in what they thought was the way down, but found no markers. "Are we lost?" Lindsay asked, her voice rising. Her breath quickened, eyes glistening. No one answered right away. Mark scanned their surroundings, frowning. Everything felt wrong. The trees, the terrain, even the small stream from last night had vanished, as if it had evaporated from the earth. "This doesn't make sense," Mark said finally. "We only hiked up one day. We should be able to retrace our steps. But now, the trail's different." The forest around them seemed too dense, too silent. No birds sang. No breeze stirred. Only the faint thrum of their own heartbeats filled the air. They decided to follow the sunrise, assuming it was east, hoping it would lead to the main trail. But what they found wasn't an exit. It was something that shouldn't have been there. Behind thick bushes and decayed trees, they stumbled on an old, tattered tent. The tent was dark green, torn on one side, its interior a mess. A sleeping bag lay open on the ground, half buried in dry leaves. Nearby, a small notebook was wedged under a rock, damp and peeling. Jake picked it up cautiously. The cover bore a faint name, Ryan Holloway. Its pages were filled with short, faded notes, most illegible, smudged or worn. But a few lines grabbed their attention. "They follow our shadows." A child's voice at 3 a.m. "I can't sleep anymore, they're waiting for it." Tessa swallowed hard, then flipped to the last page. There, in large dried red ink that looked clotted like blood, was a single sentence. "They come at night. Don't sleep." The ink was sticky at the edges, the page partly torn, as if clutched tightly before being abandoned. Lindsay stepped back. "What does this mean? Who are they?" No one answered. Among the softly rustling trees, it felt like something heard her question, and stifled a laugh. For the first time even Jake looked scared. The old tent wasn't just a relic. It was a warning. Something, whatever it was, had happened here before. And now they were in the same place. The day was growing late. Night was coming soon. Night fell faster than usual. A thin mist crept from the ground, enveloping their campsite, dimming the small campfire's flickering light. Strangely, though no wind stirred, the fire kept dying out as if snuffed by something unseen. Lindsay tried relighting the wood with a lighter, but the flames sputtered out within seconds. The air grew colder, their breath visible in white puffs. Jake, usually the most laid back, now sat close to the tent, clutching his pocket knife tightly, his eyes scanning the surrounding darkness. Around midnight the sound came, soft, echoing through the trees, a faint jingle like a pet's bell or a child's toy. It moved, sometimes closer then farther away, sometimes circling them. But when they swept their flashlights, nothing was there. Tessa woke with her heart pounding, unsure why. Her instincts screamed something was wrong. She lifted her head and looked toward the camp's edge, and that's when she saw it. Someone stood at the forest's border. A tall figure, draped in a long cloak, its body pitch black. But what froze Tessa wasn't its size or presence, it was its face. Or rather, the lack of one. Where a face should have been, there was only a swirling void of mist, like smoke curling slowly, trying to take shape but never fully forming. She held her breath, body rigid. The figure didn't move, just stood there, silent as if watching. Finally, with trembling hands, Tessa touched Lindsay's shoulder, then Jake's and Mark's. "Wake up, there's something out there," she whispered, shaken. The three snapped alert, but when they looked where Tessa pointed, the figure was gone. No rustling leaves. No retreating steps. As if it had melted into the darkness like the mist that cloaked it. Jake swept his flashlight in every direction while Mark cautiously circled the camp. That's when they saw it. Large footprints, far bigger than any humans. They weren't normal tracks. They were circular, almost spiral, as if whatever made them twisted its feet into the ground. The tracks formed a perfect ring around their tents. Not just one set, but layered as if someone, or something, had circled them while they slept. Mark stared at the prints for a long time, then said in a low voice, "This isn't human." No one responded. Deep down they all knew, this wasn't just a hike gone wrong. They had wandered into the territory of something that never wanted humans there. And now they were being watched. The fourth day began in silence. A gray sky hung sunless and thick fog blanketed the forest, obscuring everything beyond a few yards. Tessa woke first and instantly knew something was wrong. Lindsay was gone from the tent. Her pack remained, her sleeping bag open and cold. The three searched in silence, shouting Lindsay's name until their voices grew hoarse. Jake found faint footprints in the wet soil, leading north into the deeper, darker forest. They followed, step by step, a sinking dread clawing at the backs of their necks. They found Lindsay just a few dozen yards from camp, standing statue still, facing a dead tree. Her eyes were wide open, unblinking, vacant. But the worst was her mouth, torn from corner to corner as if forced into a smile by unseen hands. Scrawled across her shirt in dried blood were the words, "Laugh or die." Tessa staggered back, breath catching, while Mark gripped her shoulder to steady her. Jake tried talking to Lindsay, but she didn't respond. No tears, no words, no movement. She didn't even seem to breathe. Desperate to escape, they abandoned camp and fled down the mountain, any direction that might take them away from this terror. But within an hour, the faintly bright sky turned pitch black. Night fell too fast, like a curtain yanked shut. Sounds began creeping through the air. First, a child's laughter, distant at first, then closer. Then crackling, like an old radio switching on, spitting fragments of human voices, half broken, half whispered. And finally, the sound they dreaded most. Their names called one by one from behind the trees. Jake stopped dead. His eyes widened, his body trembling violently. That's Mom," he whispered. "She's there, calling me." His hand pointed into the trees where the fog was thickest. Mark tried to pull him back, but Jake shoved him away and ran into the darkness, frantically calling his mother's name. "Jake, no!" Tessa screamed. They chased after him but found nothing. His tracks vanished, his voice faded. All that remained was a single shoe left in the dirt and his phone lying on a rock, its cracked screen still glowing. Tessa picked it up with shaking hands. In the voice memo gallery there was a new recording. They played it. It started with Jake's ragged breathing as if he were running. Then came a low, soft laugh, almost like it came from inside his chest. At the end, a deep, inhuman voice spoke. "She already knows you, Tessa." Tessa dropped the phone. Her hands felt like ice. The world seemed to close in around her, and somehow she knew the voice in the recording wasn't just a threat. It was a declaration from something drawing closer. They weren't just trapped. They were chosen. The two of them, Mark and Tessa, found their last refuge in a small cave on a steep rocky slope. The cave was narrow and damp, just enough for them to crouch and lean against the cold stone walls. Outside, the night stretched on as if time itself refused to move. Tessa sat hugging her knees, her body trembling from cold and unrelenting fear. Mark sat facing the cave wall, staring blankly at the rough, wet stone. Since Jake vanished, Mark had barely spoken. He only muttered, about voices in the ground, roots that breathed, and eyes that never blinked. That night, Mark began carving strange symbols into the wall with his own blood, drawn from a small cut on his arm, sliced open with a sharp rock. The symbols were circular, spiraling, chaotic, yet following some pattern only he understood. Amid his whispers, Tessa caught one phrase repeated, "The eyes see from the roots, it's awake." Tessa tried to stop him, pleading for them to leave and keep searching for a way down, but Mark didn't hear her. His eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated, and an odd smile crept across his face as he pressed his bloody palm against the cave's final wall. When dawn came, Tessa woke to an eerie stillness, too still. She looked up and found Mark gone. No footprints. No sound of departing steps. Only dried blood on the stone and a large sentence scrawled across the cave wall. "It's beneath us. And it's hungry." Tessa screamed Mark's name, but only her own echo answered. The forest outside now felt utterly alien. Trees loomed taller, their shadows thicker, the air heavy with something unseen. She didn't know how, but she kept walking, directionless, hopeless. Day turned to night, night back to day, and time no longer felt real. Sometimes she heard Mark's laughter. Sometimes she felt a hand brush her shoulder as she slept, but when she turned, no one was there. A week later, villagers at the base of Blackroot Mountain found her. Tessa staggered out of the forest, her clothes tattered, her body covered in scratches and bruises. Her face no longer seemed her own, pale, gaunt, her eyes wide open, unblinking even in the sunlight. The police took her in, asking over and over where her friends were, what happened, why she was alone. But Tessa just sat silently, staring at the interrogation room wall. Finally, one sentence slipped from her lips, soft, almost a whisper. "That mountain isn't ours, it chooses who gets to leave." After that, Tessa never spoke again. She was admitted to a psychiatric hospital in Boise, diagnosed with severe stress disorder and traumatic delusions. But local hikers knew better, it wasn't delusion. Blackroot Mountain held something ancient, hungry, and aware. And though Tessa returned to the world, part of her soul remained in that forest, beneath the breathing earth. Blackroot Mountain still stands today. But no hikers dare try it anymore. That forest, it holds something. Whether ancient, demonic, or something not of this world, one thing is certain. If you venture too deep, you'll find something, or something will find you. If you love this chilling tale, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, so you never miss our dark, spine-tingling horror stories from every corner of the globe.